Okay, I am joined by Wilco, Vice President, Global Revenue and Digital Strategy with Kempinski Hotels, coming to us from Switzerland. And as you can see, he's social distancing himself from everyone.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
You bet. I'm at the Houstonian Hotel Club and Spa in Houston, enjoying my day in this little getaway tucked away in all of Houston's urbanness. But Wilco, tell us about your personal experience over the past few months.
Well, I have to say, normally if incidents happen, I say, okay, I'm one of the older guys in the office, so I've seen it before, but this time it's definitely not the case. I mean, this was unprecedented. And also, I openly admit I never ever in my career I've been that wrong, like my forecast at the beginning of March. We did a lot of analysis back there, but I find it today confirmingly impossible to forecast political decisions and politicians and behaviors. So it hit us just as hard as anyone else. Then out of that, let's say, first weeks of lockdown, which was a lot of learning and improvisation, I think we came out pretty soon with a structure, and taking it from there, we worked our way all the way up. Of course, with the Chinese portfolio, we've been impacted. I've been monitoring the situation already in Q4 last year, but I had really not seen it going to that scale and to that global level and global lockdown, number of closed hotels. That was new for me as well. So it's a steep learning curve, but I'm very proud about being with a company, with a team that has proven the capabilities and the skills to do as good as we could.
Tell us a little bit about the portfolio, properties all over the world, right?
Yeah, so Kempinski, what's important, I mean, we're one of the eldest luxury heritage brands and the eldest or the most traditional one out of Europe, but with a very young soul. So when some of my colleagues speak to me, they say, well, Wilco, you just got 75 to 80 hotels. But the difference is, of course, that this is a very diverse portfolio. So in some of the markets, we have one hotel in one country. Most of these hotels are iconic flagships to their markets. So the responsibility of pricing and handling them is not just having a commodity product where you follow the market. It's all, in very many cases, giving the pace to the market. And we handle this with care and, of course, with both looking into what we do to the market, but also what we do to these iconic hotels that you can't just price them, for instance, to give an example.
Yeah.
Kempinski is a mixture of both city hotels and resort hotels. And I have to say, I've never been more grateful for having a strong resort portfolio than the past week. However, there is a variety, and it's definitely not a company where you can run a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about the juggling act you've had to do in all the different geographies and the governmental institutions, or all the different restrictions. Must be maddening.
Yeah. Well, let's say there was a time at the beginning of the lockdown where we had a almost synchronized lockdown situation in most of the markets. So for the first time ever, there was something happening in all the markets at the same time. But from there, every government took different measures. And right now, in kind of getting back from lockdown into the new normal, you have to watch a lot of countries, and you have to kind of watch a lot of feeder markets into certain countries. So the metrics we have in my office, having all the feeder markets or the top feeder markets against all of the portfolio, is quite a heavy one. And my entire team was smiling, and because I was printing it out, I needed to have it on the wall. So that's quite a lot of factors to watch. The other thing, and I think this is common for all the revenue managers, revenue directors, and corporate people in comparable roles, we have come again, not for the first time, but again to a point where automized revenue management decision taking is challenged by far. And looking at revenue management as a discipline where we always pride ourselves to have a really good forecast and then to have a precise planning against the forecast, we also came to a situation where forecasts was close to impossible, or long-time forecast is impossible still these days. So how do you cope with that? So in a very, very short time, we had to do a cultural shift in going from a efficiency driven by very good forecasting and planning into efficiency driven by acting fast to the main drivers in your market. And that kind of culture shift, I'm a little bit proud to say we've done that very fast. And I'm proud of the team that has adapted really fast. So we disabled decision uploads, for instance. We changed the forecasting rhythm. We changed the structure of the weekly meetings. We had also a couple of things where in the beginning, everybody was looking, as revenue managers are, we were looking for data that we can cope with. And all of a sudden, everybody was looking at cases and vaccine development pipelines and stuff. And then in the mid-April, I sent out a memo and said, like, I don't want to see the John Hopkins slide or the number of cases in any of the weekly revenue meetings anymore, because it's just not the right figure to look at for the revenue manager in the decision making. So we brought everything back to things like the pickup and to main drivers like airline capacities, especially travel restrictions by the government, etc. And we identified 3 clusters: it's airlines, the airline capacities, the governmental restrictions, and the for the corporate hotels, the impact on the corporate programs, to look at, to monitor closely, and to come up with a fast and logic reaction to it. And that, once we put that in place, the good thing was it came back from a feeling where the environment was controlling us into we cannot change the environment, but at least we control the actions to a fact that we feel comfortable. And that was a very good point that we reached, I think, early May. And from there on, I mean, we, like everyone else, we take the situation, we do our best with it, but we have a solid optimism that we have a plan of how to cope with the recent situation, how to cope with the recovery in steps, and then how to get out, and that we will get out at the end.
Okay. All right, Wilco, with the minute we have left, any advice for hoteliers out there going through this?
Well, basically what I said before, just to underline it, we've had many years in revenue management where it was all about forecast and then deriving an exact planning from that forecast and amending the forecast. Now, these days, this is utterly difficult because we have factors which are unforeseeable. And number one of this that I'd like to quote is politicians and their decisions reacting, because this is even detached from the number of cases. This is detached from, let's say, rational behavior. It's more like emotional influences. And therefore, this shift from planning into fast reactions, and some people might know, some people, most probably don't. My first education was a paramedic at the ambulance service. And being a paramedic is an environment that you can't forecast. You don't know what's happening next. You just have to be very, very fast in your reactions, and you have to be very rational in what you do, and you have to focus on proven things that also have a proven cause and effect. And this kind of experience was tremendously helpful in kind of shifting the mindset, saying, okay, I don't know what's going to be in 3 months or 5 months or 5 years, but I know what we have today, and I know if something changes, how can I adapt as fast as possible, and how can I secure, and that's the number one thing, like in all the crises, how can I, as a director of revenue, ensure that we're gaining market share even in times of declining markets? And if you're good in these things, hey, then you're ahead of the competition, and that's as good as you can be.
All right, sir. Some good advice. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you very much, Jason, and a very cordial grüezi from Switzerland.